Good evening and welcome to the Mike Vogiatzakis Show. I'm Mike Vogiatzakis. We have a great show planned up for you tonight and a special guest. And before we even get to the commercial, we're going to bring our special guest on. And we're going to say, before we do that, I just want to let you know, Brad is in the penalty box. I had enough of him last week. He's in the penalty box. He's going to be producing the show. You are not going to see his face on camera tonight. So, Brad, have fun in the background.
Yeah,
buddy.
I will. I'm here.
I brought somebody much better looking than you on the show.
Yeah, that's right.
Her name is Cecily, better known as Jennifer. and we're going to get into that in a couple of minutes. So do you want to go to a commercial first, or do you want to go? We're going to go into a commercial. We're going to come back, say hi to some people, and then we're going to tell you about our guests. Thanks for joining the Mike Vogiatzakis Show.
Everlasting Memorials are Manitoba's memorial specialists. Are you looking for a memorial for your loved one or yourself? The team of expert memorial design consultants at Everlasting Memorials provides a variety of high-quality granite, marble, and bronze products in many styles, sizes, and colors. Additionally, we also produce cremation urns, pet memorials, statues, vases, and other grave accessories for you to choose from. Our in-house stonemason, graphic artist, sandblasting booth, and laser etching machine can make your design fully customized so it suits the memory. Established in 1986, we're a family business with a commitment to provide compassionate memorial products for the departed. Some of our work can be seen in small towns and big city cemeteries, parks and trails, as well as heritage sites all throughout Canada. We can help you choose a memorial that best represents the essence of a person's life. Everlasting Memorials, for the comfort of peace and remembrance. Visit us online to book your free consultation at everlastingmemorials.ca.
Welcome back to the Mike Vogiatzakis Show. Before I come and talk to you and say hi to some people, I just want to introduce my very special guest tonight. Her name is Cecily. Got that right?
You got that right.
All week I've been calling her. So here's what happened. I met Cecily at the beginning of my brother's trial, where she was with us the whole time. And when I was talking to Victim Services, I was talking to a Jennifer. So I assumed that Cecily was Jennifer. So through the whole time I was calling her Jennifer, and she never said anything. And then one day she wasn't there, and I said to the other girl that works for her, I'm like, hey, where's Jennifer? Jennifer? Who's Jennifer? You know, Jennifer, the girl that's been with us all week. We don't have a Jennifer. Oh, what's that girl's name with the long hair? The pretty girl. Oh, Cecily. and that's how that came about. So it's Cecily Hildebrand, and she's from Candace House. An interesting story about Candace House, and she's going to tell us about it tonight. But I remember Candace and the whole story that she's going to share with you when I was just a kid in that neighborhood. But before we do that, we're going to say hi to some people. And Cecily, you're going to help me. There's a screen right there, and we're going to start it with number 1 tonight. It's usually Gord, but Steve Bage. Good evening, everyone, he says. Your turn.
We have Terry Thiessen. Hello from Southern Alberta. Hello to you from Southern Manitoba.
And how about Michelle? You forgot about Michelle.
Oh, Michelle, sorry.
Hi, everyone.
Michelle.
Tracy's on the show. Good evening.
Randolph. Hi. Hello.
She says, good evening, Mike, Brad. Brad's in the background. It's Mike and Cecily. That's who it is tonight. And then Dan Ross from Ross, Manitoba. Good evening, everyone.
Hello to Lisa, who says hello back to us.
And, of course, Michelle, one of my favorite people, replying to Dan Ross. Hey, Dan. And Kevin. Want to say hi to Kevin?
Hi, Kevin. Good evening to you.
Janet, hello from Smithers. And then, of course, we have Gail. Good evening, everyone, she says. And here, why don't you do this one?
Marie Bloom. Nice to have you here.
Wow. Well, we'll come back and say hello to some more people in just a little bit. But tonight's show is going to be an interesting show. For most of you that know, my brother Kyriakis was murdered January 24th of 2024. And almost 2 years later, the trial finally took place. It started last week. It finished this week. And the trial is now over. And that's where Candace House comes in. Before I go any further, I just want to say thank you to Candace House. What an incredible group of people. Now, if there's someone you want to support, this is the group to support. And when she tells you about Candace House and what they do, it'll be exciting. But it was heartbreaking to see Cecily, who didn't even know my mom, in the courtroom. And there she was sitting beside her at one point, holding her hand. And it was heartbreaking to see a complete stranger to the family who became part of our family at the end, reaching out and just showing love. A total stranger showing love in a courtroom. And for those of you who are mothers or fathers or parents, you can only imagine the heartbreak in that courtroom. It was something else, almost like being in the movies, to see the criminal or the accused being walked into the courtroom, handcuffed and shackled. And for us to see him for the first time, it was emotional. And there's so many things that go through your head. You know, there's anger. There's a point where you want to just attack the guy. And I think that's perfectly normal. And there he is, your brother's killer, face to face with you in the courtroom. And for my mom to see him for the very first time, she had tears in her eyes. And she basically said, that's the guy who killed my son. And Candace House was with us the whole time. And some special things that Candace House does. For example, you know, you're in this courtroom, you're dehydrated, you're stressed, you're sweating, you're going through all kinds of emotions. And here come these nice people that reach out and give water to you and mints and just come and ask if you're okay and pass over Kleenexes when there's tears. And that's something very special. And when you're going through the loss of a loved one, and then you're going through so remember, you're going through this twice. First, you're going through the actual murder, and then to follow that, the funeral and everything else that goes on. And after that, 2 years later, it comes all back to life again, because now you're in the courtroom. And what was heartbreaking in that courtroom, and you'll attest to this, is my mom, we tried to protect our mom for the longest time, and we tried to protect her from seeing the video. And my mom asked me so many times, Mike, I want to see the video. I want to see what happened to Kyriakos. And I said, Mom, you can't see the video. I'm not going to let you see the video. And then when court came, I said, Mom, they're probably going to play the video, and you don't have to sit and watch it. You know, you go in the hallway, and the judge in the court will let you know that the video will be played. My mom decided to stay and watch that video because, like any mother, she cared and she loved Kyriakos, and she wanted to see what happened to her. But I don't think she was prepared to see exactly what happened to her. It was a brutal act of violence. Brutal act of violence that didn't only, it never finished. The guy came back twice and beat Kyriakos. Well, he was unconscious on the ground. And for a mother to see that, every kick, every punch, she felt the pain and probably still hasn't gone to sleep because it's so emotional and heartbreaking. I hope no mother or father who's watching the show tonight will ever have to go through that. It's a tragic event to go through, and the process is long, it's draining. And I'll tell you, for most of you that know me, I don't get stressed out too easy. I mean, I'm a funeral director. I deal with death every single day of the week. I deal with families that are coming in at their actual worst time in their lives. And then when you go through it yourself and you see your brother's killer, and yesterday we had to listen to the defense lawyer and the Crown attorney, and some of the things the defense lawyer was saying, to me, were draining the energy out of me to the point where at the end of the courtroom I had to leave because I probably would have said something that I would have regretted afterwards. But I think those are the emotions you go through. So with that being said, I went home yesterday around 6:30, and I said to Sharon, hey, I'm going to bed. And I went to bed and just fell asleep. And so it's an emotional, draining experience. And I'm sure you see a lot of that. And maybe you want to ask a question or share a story or maybe share something about the trial yourself. And people don't really know what goes on in trials.
No.
You know, you see it on TV and you think, well, I know what it's like. But let me tell you something. A trial is totally different than what you think. I mean, walking into the courtroom alone, you feel like a criminal. You know, they're making you take off your belts and your shoes. And at one point I told Angelo, this guy that was with us, I go, hey, just pull down your pants and walk through, because it's crazy. It's actually embarrassing what they do. It's almost like going through the airport. So what do you see? Well, first of all, tell us about yourself. Tell us about yourself and who you are and why you do what you do and what Candace House is. And I'm sure everybody wants to hear it.
Yeah, so hi, everyone. It's nice to be here tonight. My name is Cecily Hildebrand. I'm the executive director for Candace House. Thanks for having me here, Mike.
It's a pleasure.
To talk. Yeah. You know what? I think, like you said it so well, where the court experience, Candace House really came out of exactly what you describe, is this idea that the court system and the court process is not made for families who have experienced traumatic loss. You are going through, airport type security, and you don't know who's around you, and there's sheriffs, and you don't know where to go, and it's a system that you're not used to. You don't know how to navigate it, what's going to come, where you sit, who's who, and it's a very overwhelming system, and it's a system that's just not made to provide a lot of comfort and care. There's not a whole lot of space. Well, there really is no space within the court system or in the court process for families to go during that time. And that's what your family experienced. And that's why Candace House was created, to try to meet that need, to create a safe place that families can go with staff to be able to provide support to families during that time.
Yeah, and you're so compassionate and caring and just there for the family and answering questions. And, the average person that's going through a court trial doesn't know what to expect, doesn't know what's going to happen next. And our family was much the same. And of course, Cecily and her staff were right on top of us the whole time. And they just don't leave. They're there from the beginning until they walk you to the door. And I remember one time she walked me to the door and she said, "Are you okay? And I'm like, "No, you could go." But no, she stayed right till the end. Now, I want to talk about Candace House because the whole story about Candace and what happened. And it's families like that motivate me to do what I'm doing. And if you're watching the show, that I'm a guy who's stepped outside the box and is standing up for people that have victims against crime, that are standing up against the catch and release program, that's standing up. I'm standing up for so much in the city that's wrong and trying to make it right. And I said one thing. In my brother's memory, I would leave a legacy in the city forever, because Vogiatzakis deserved it. And, the mayor of the city has lit a fire in my soul that it's not easy to put out. And, compassion is the most important thing a city can have. And I feel our city lacks compassion. And Candace House comes from, if you remember way back, I don't remember the year this happened, but there was a young girl who was murdered. And it was just off Nairn, and it was in a field back then, just by the bridge. And Candace's family was looking for Candace for quite a while, and nobody could seem to find her. And then by accident one day, somebody opened up a shed, and there was Candace in the middle of winter. And I mean, that's heartbreaking just to hear that story. And to see a family like Candace's family reach out and put together Candace House. And to be honest with you, I didn't know what Candace House was. And I heard Cecily, a conversation with her and another person, and I went, wow, Candace Dirksen. I remember that perfectly. I mean, I was just, a younger guy back then, but I remember all the details. I remember exactly what happened and how heartbreaking it was for that family and the people involved in the school and the kids and everything that took place. And it motivates me to see families try to make a difference when they lose a loved one to a murder or to a suicide or to a drug overdose. And the family steps outside the box and tries to make change and tries to stop it from happening to another family. And that's just amazing when you see things like that happen. So tell me more about Candace House. How do you work? How do you trade? So another thing they do is, they take the family out. Like after going through such an intense court hearing that sometimes could take 8 hours, and with a few breaks, you're drained. And then Candace House takes you out. They get you food. They pay for it. It's all on Candace House. And it just gives that family a little bit of peace of mind. And, sort of like at the funeral home when I don't charge for a child and the family says, "You don't know us. Why aren't you charging us for our child? Like, we don't deserve this." And I say, well, I do it because it's not all about money. It's about love. And Candace House does much of the same. And a few times we reach out and say, no, we'll pay for it. We'll take care of it. No, we got it. And then we say, okay, well, we'll grab the tip. No, we'll grab that too. So it's such an amazing gesture. And tell me more about it. Like, how do you get your money to do this, and how can we help you, and what do you do for families from the first time you meet them, and what's the whole contact process with victim services?
Yeah. So I guess to go back a bit, so back in 1984 is when Candace Dirksen went missing. And then she was missing for 7 weeks before her body was found. And then it was unsolved for 22 years. And then after those 22 years, the case was reopened. And for the next 9 years, the Dirksen family went through the trial process. So from prelim to the court process to appeal and retrial. And during the preliminary hearing, actually in August, so it was in summertime, Wilma's sister actually came out from BC with a camper van, and they parked the camper van at the legislative building.
Wow.
And that kind of became their home base during that time. So they would go there during breaks and lunches, and they would have a picnic, and they would take a nap, and they would just kind of gather on the grounds. And Wilma had done a lot of work, so Candace's mom had done a lot of work with victims prior to that. And during that time, they realized that this is exactly what victims need. Victims need a place to go while you're navigating this court process. And what families, go through, but other people don't understand, is that sometimes the court process, especially in cases of homicide, sometimes you're attending 200 or 300 days of court. And so that's 200 or 300 days of trying to find parking and trying to find food and trying to navigate the court process. So Candace House really came out of this firsthand experience of families need a place to go. And so now over the years, we've been open for 7 years. We've worked with almost 3,000 people in connection to about 275 homicides since we opened. And we really provide wraparound support. So very shortly after a homicide occurs, we're working together with police and Crown attorneys. We're walking with families through the court process, attending court together with them. And now as we continue to grow, also being there during the corrections and the parole phase. So really trying to help families navigate the legal part of the system, but providing that emotional care along the way. And I've apologized to your family a few times on this, but normally we invite families back to Candace House. Our space is located about half a block from the Law Courts building. And we have space where we can accompany 2 or 3 families, depending on size. And it's a home-like place that families can come during the day with a full kitchen and a living room and a dining area, and you can watch TV and relax. And unfortunately, these last few weeks, we've had 6 or 7 homicide cases proceeding concurrently. And so unfortunately, we were unable to accommodate your family, which is unfortunately happens. But I'm really glad that we were able to still take you out and take care of you in that way. But that's a little bit about what we do.
It was incredible, the care that you gave. And so how does Candace House survive? Like, how do you come up with money? How can we help you? What can we do as a family who's been through the justice system now and reach out and help? And that's why I wanted to have you on the show. I think it's important for people to know everything about Candace House, about the justice system, how the courts work. If the courts are going to change, you don't know, but I've been constantly fighting this catch and release program, very upset with what the courts are doing and how they handle situations. And, I want to talk about my brother's killer just for 1 sec before we get into
Yep.
My brother's killer he had a criminal record that was, a mile long. And the last time that he was released, it was on a promise to appear. And he never did appear for a whole year. And I remember it was a year before my brother was murdered. There was a post on Facebook from the RCMP saying, be cautious, don't approach this person, call 911, dangerous. And my son just happened to share it on Facebook. So I got it. And then I said to Josh, why did you share that? I'm just curious. What made you share this wanted guy? And he said, I don't know, Dad. I just wanted to keep people safe. And a year later, that photo that he shared on Facebook, that's the guy who killed my brother. He was on the run, on the wild, and a menace to society, on a promise to appear after committing numerous crimes. And I've been in contact with many of the people who were in contact with him before, and they were telling me about the menace he was on society, the crime, the violence, who he was as a person. And it was heartbreaking to see that was the guy that killed my brother. So how can people help you? How can people Candace House so you could continue to provide the care that you do for families?
Yeah, so Candace House really was built from community. If it wasn't for donations from the community, we wouldn't be where we are today. And we continue to really exist because of support from the community. We do receive some government funding from both the province and the federal government, but a lot of it, the vast majority of our budget really comes from private donors who see what we do, who see the impact and want to get behind us and support us in being able to support families. So really when it comes down to it, it's a community that we create at Candace House, and it's the community behind us that keeps us being able to support the families that we do.
And sometimes people ask me as a funeral director, where can I donate money? Where can I give money to help other people? Well, there's a perfect chance right now, Candace House, a place where you can drop a few dollars and help some families because families need somebody at their time of need. And I'm sure there's courtrooms that have maybe just a mom or dad in there and nobody else. And some families are alone. And you need that comfort in the background, somebody who's there that you could count on, or somebody who can hold your hand or wipe your tears away. It is such an emotional time to go through court. What's the what challenges do the families face in the justice system, and how do you help?
Yeah, there are so many challenges. It comes from the moment. I mean, and we can talk more about your experience. From the moment that you find out that your loved one is murdered, your whole world is just turned upside down. Like nothing that you once knew is the same, and nothing will be the same again. You learn to live and adapt to it, but you'll never be the same again. And then on top of that, so you're grieving this loss, you're trying to understand, and then you're thrown into this system that you're trying to navigate that you don't know how, you don't know what's going to come. And so what Candace House does is, following a homicide that occurs, we meet together with police. We have those meetings in our space so that families are supported in a place that they feel comfortable and safe, and where we can provide food and snacks and that emotional support and care that they need. On a daily basis, when it comes time to court, families are coming to Candace House to have some coffee and snacks before going to court. We go together to court with families. And that process, like you talked about, is just an incredibly overwhelming process where, you're hearing really horrible things. You're seeing really horrible things. It's incredibly upsetting trying to navigate all of the grief and then all of the system pieces as well.
And the tension in that courtroom, like the tension is so filled in that room that people want to explode, and there's lots of anger and lots of things that go through your mind when you're in that courtroom. And what did you think? Because you got to watch the video, and not asking your opinion on what you think happened or anything like that, but what did you think of that video, and how emotional was it for you even? Because you go into this as a real person. Sure, you work at Candace House. Sure, you're compassionate and caring. But then you see things like a person being murdered on video, which you don't see too often.
No.
And video is probably the best evidence. And sometimes I say to myself, well, why do we need a court trial? We have a video, which is evidence. We have the medical examiner's office, which gave you evidence on how the person died and what his damages were to his body. But of course, that's not the way it works, right? The system is a system that you just got to go through, and it takes its turn and its toll on a family. But how did you feel watching that video, and how did it feel to see a mother, and brothers and relatives in that crowd crying and uncontrollably at times because it's so emotional to see what happened? And seeing is believing.
Yeah. Like I mentioned, Candace House has worked with and supported thousands of family members in connection to hundreds of different cases. And every case is different. And every case kind of, potentially gets at you in a different way. And now with more cameras being around and, increases in terms of technology, you are starting to see more and more the actual event captured on video. And it's so hard to watch the actual events that happened. And to be honest, Mike, I generally try to not watch.
Yeah.
We see so much of it in our work, and I love my job and I love what I do, and I want to keep doing it for as long as I can. And so as staff, I have to be very careful about what I'm consuming, what I'm taking in. What I'm normally doing during times when that video is being shown is I'm watching you folks. I'm watching the family. I'm seeing who needs Kleenex, who needs water, who maybe needs to go outside and take a break, who, maybe there's a medical incident that, it can be incredibly triggering to be able to try to sit in this place and watch this video while the person that took the life of your loved one is, 10 feet away.
And which family member is going to get arrested?
Yeah, well, and sometimes it's trying to, because we don't want that to happen, right? We don't want the family members who are here who have gone through so much to now be the ones that are, getting in trouble because their emotions, rightfully so, that they have, it's hard when the court requires decorum and you don't want to do anything else, you don't want to have decorum. You just want to make it known how you feel.
So when our family was in the courtroom, I was really surprised to find out that there were 6 other murder trials or homicide trials taking place in that courtroom all at the same time. And Candace House was part of all of them. So you must have a pretty big staff to be able to take care of 6 grieving families that are in court.
Mm-hmm. We do our best. Yeah, we, like I mentioned, we have space for about 3 families, depending on size, at our building. And then when we don't have room, then we're, taking families out. But there's 5 of us staff. And my staff is, shout out to my staff. I feel incredibly lucky to have the staff that I do. They do tremendous work, and I'm so very proud of them. And then we also work together with a lot of partners in the community. So we're working together with Provincial Victim Services, with different organizations and agencies around the city and Manitoba who also provide victim support. And a lot of it is, done together in court, but then they're coming back to Candace House and providing support to families in that way as well. So it's our team, it's my team, but really it's the broader community that's working together to do this work.
So I have a question to ask you. Mm-hmm. But you have a question to ask me.
I do have a question.
Not too often do you sit on camera with a funeral director who's also part of a murder trial. And what would be your question?
So Mike and I were having a conversation before things got rolling tonight, and I've spoken with many families who, in the immediate following of their loved one being murdered and what that process is like. Mike brings some very unique experiences in terms of what it's like, because you don't think about your loved one's murdered, but now what? What about the cremation or the burial, or who picks up, the remains? And so I would love for you to share what your experience was like, because I think that people don't understand that process.
So being a brother and also being a funeral director, obviously it was one of the toughest things in my life to decide when my younger brother, who was really my best friend, and I pretty much raised the little guy because I was the oldest brother. So we did a lot of hanging out together. And, that day before he was murdered, I was at his restaurant, and I was working on Ask the Funeral Director, and it was loud in the restaurant, and I was going to stay and wait for Kyriakis to watch the first part of the Winnipeg Jets game. And then it was just too loud for me to concentrate, and I phoned him, and I said to him, Kyriakis, I can't stay. I said, I'm going to take off. And, hey, bro, how was your day today? And what'd you do? He always had time to find out about you, even though he was in a meeting. Mm-hmm. And then I just told him what I was doing, and then he said, okay, man. He goes, I love you. And I said, I love you back. And that was the last time I talked to my brother. An hour later, he was murdered. And there's lots of plays for your mind. And one of the things that keeps playing in my mind is, why did I leave? Why didn't I stay and wait and be with my brother? And more than likely, I would have saved his life. And more than likely, he wouldn't have been in that situation if I was there. But I'm sure that goes on in many people's minds. Coulda, shoulda, woulda. Mm-hmm. But the bottom line is, we have to deal with reality. And the reality is, and was, my brother was dead. And, he went through an autopsy, which I never ever would have wanted my brother to go through, because it was a criminal investigation. He had to. And then I had to make the decision of whether I was going to take my brother into my care. And obviously we were going to take him into Voyage Funeral Home. But was I going to do it personally? So we went to the hospital, and as we were going to the health science center where my brother lay in the morgue, I took a senior funeral director with me, Mike McIver, and we walked into that morgue, and it was a feeling that I'm never going to forget. When I opened up that morgue door, there was maybe 30 some odd bodies in there, and one of those bodies was my brother's. And I had to walk and check each body and check each toe tag until I found Kyriakis. When I found him, there was just a feeling of, wow, I can't even describe the feeling. It was just emptiness in my body and unbelief that I was in a morgue taking my little brother into my care. And I remember Mike asking me if he can help put him on the stretcher, and I said, no, I want to do this myself. And I remember taking my little brother and putting him on the stretcher and zipping up that stretcher, which I didn't want to do, and walking towards that elevator to Health Science Center where you're going up a floor. And Mike and I got into the elevator with Kyriakis on the stretcher, and we both looked at each other, and there was tears in our eyes. And then we loaded Kyriakis into the van, the removal van. And when we got in, we both just cried. And we cried all the way to the funeral home. And I just couldn't believe that my little brother was in the back of the van in a stretcher. It was heartbreaking. It was painful. I had anger, and I had fear and frustration and so many emotions going through my mind. And I was worried about my mom and so many things. So we get into the hospital, and the door opens at the funeral home door, and time to take the stretcher out of the back of the van and go to the morgue. And Mike is like a brother to me, who's my senior funeral director at the funeral home. And he looked at me and he said, you don't have to do this. And I said, well, let's get Kyriakis in the morgue, and then I'll decide whether I'm going to stay or not. And then we got Kyriakis in the morgue area, and we unshrouded him, and we got him to the table. And there you see your brother, a person you love, taken apart as he went through an autopsy. And you're seeing your brother like you'd never think you'd ever see somebody. So I decided to be there and embalm my brother with Mike's help. And we did it together. And I remember when I started the embalming, it just stopped. And I said, Mike, stop. I said, I need to say a prayer over my brother's body and for you and I. And I said a prayer. And after that prayer, it was almost like there was a weight lifted off my shoulder. And we went on and we did the work we had to do to prepare my brother's body for viewing. And it's almost like God carried me through this, and I was working on somebody, but it wasn't my brother. And you just went to work as a mortician, and you did what you got to do. So it was a heartbreaking experience that I'll never forget. You know, dressing Kyriakis, placing him in the casket, doing a memorial service for him, a candlelight service, which hundreds of people showed up to, and 2 days of a funeral service, prayers and the actual funeral service. And I wasn't part of all that, but it's something you never dream of. It's something you never think you'd ever have to do. And all of a sudden, you're the victim. You're there embalming your little brother. You're there doing the unthinkable. And people have asked me time and time again, how did you do that? How did you embalm your little brother? Like, what made you do that? I did it because I love my brother. And I thought, there's nobody who's going to do a better job than me being in that room with him and making sure that everything is okay. So, you know, when I was in the courtroom, and when the medical examiner's office came in and was talking about Kyriakis' injuries, I was playing those injuries in my head because I seen them. I seen the broken ribs. I seen the damage to his upper body and to his head. And then when I watch the video and I see what this guy did to him, you know, everything just falls into place. Are you strong to do something like this? I think it takes a higher power, strength to carry you through a time like this. And I remember walking out of the morgue with a feeling of just emptiness, like I was going to pass out, like this just didn't really happen. It was a movie. And it was like God cleared my mind, and I didn't remember anything that happened in the morgue. It was like I didn't remember being in there. And that's just what happened, and that was my experience as a funeral director. And not too many funeral directors would be with their own loved one and work on them. So the court case for me was emotional in different ways. I mean, not saying that my brothers and my mom did feel the pain, because they did, but I felt the pain on a different angle. Mm-hmm. And it was my choice. So my brothers would say, it was your choice. Yes, it was my choice. But you do it for love. Just like you do things for love when you work with families through Cantos. Yeah. So let's talk about a typical day a table at Candace's house, working with families. Like, what's your typical day? How does your day start out? How do you plan your day? And how do you stay with these families the whole time?
Yeah.
Like, that's a long time.
Yeah. You never really know what a day is going to be like. It's all over the place, and so you get to work and you just roll with whatever happens. Really, on a day-to-day basis, we're getting to the office where families are coming in, we're having coffee and tea, and we're sitting around the kitchen table like you would when you go to your family's place, right? We are trying to make a place that feels like home for families at a time when nothing feels certain. And I want to say also, thank you for sharing that, Mike, because, I had a mom one time describe how finding out about her son's death felt like, someone had ripped all of her guts out of her body, and she had just started to put them back in until the court process came along and ripped them all back out. And that's really what it is like. There's a length of time, which sometimes people, it's not like it is on TV where it's, homicide happens and a week later it's the case and then it's done. It's years, years sometimes from the time that a homicide occurs to the time that you get to court. And so you have started to kind of, move to a different place, and then the court process comes along and you sit there and you think of your brother. Yeah. And you think of what you saw, and it's a horrific experience that you have to go through. And so what we do on a daily basis from day to day is just walking with families. I tell my staff that a big part of what we do is, we're providing coffee and tea and snacks and helping families navigate the legal system. But really at the end of the day, we're there to bear witness. We're there to be with families and to see the pain that you're going through, and to have you know that we see you. We see you in that, and that we want to be there for you. There was one, if I can share a story.
Please do.
There was a mom who had come through where she had 6 children and had lost 3 in a span of 2 years. So she had lost 2 of her children due to health-related issues, and then one of her other children had been murdered. And she wanted to attend court. And so her parents would pick her up and they would come to Candace's house, and she tried to go to court on the first day, and it was just too hard. It was to sit there and hear very horrific details about what happened. She just couldn't do it. So instead what she did, because Candace's house is located half a block from the law courts, is family would come in the morning and then she would just hang out at Candace's house for the day. So she would watch TV and we would hang out with her. Some of my staff would go to court with the family. Some people would stay back. And the more that time went on, so it was a 3-week-long trial, and the more that time went on, the more family started to come. So by the end of the trial, they realized, oh, there's a safe space here. We can come and be here. And there was one day towards the end of the trial where we were sitting there, and I was sitting at the dining room table with her brother, and she was sitting in the living room with her remaining 3 children, and they were sitting around and they were laughing and they were talking, and sometimes people forget that laughing is a hugely important part of grieving, right? You got to laugh. You got to tell those stories. And in a system that is so focused on how your loved one died, what Candace's house is about is remembering how your loved one lived. And so I was sitting there with the brother, and she's laughing and talking, and he kind of gets quiet, and he looks at me and says, I haven't seen her laugh like this in a long time. And I said, well, why do you think that is? And he says, well, I think it's because we're all together in a place where we feel safe. And of course I start, getting a little weepy, because I'm like, this is exactly why we're here. And then he says, I'll go one step further and say, if it weren't for Candace's house, my sister would have walked this road alone. And that's true. That happens a lot, where if there's not going to be support and care along the way, then trying to navigate this system while trying to navigate grief and trauma just doesn't happen. And so we're there to provide that safe place and that safe support for families on a daily basis.
And I think safe place is the right word. Families in the court are lost. It's not a safe place, because criminals are being walked around with shackles and handcuffs in front of your eyes. It's so surreal to actually see what goes on. I remember that day we were in there. There were six homicides, like you said, and these people on trial were being walked with sheriffs and bailiffs, and even in our own courtroom at one time, the killer, the accused, broke out and went on a rampage and starts saying things he should have been saying. We were asked to leave the courtroom, and then you saw more guards coming in and reshackling them and handcuffing them up. So it's pretty intense when you go through all that, because it is emotional and you feel alone. And when you're with people that are there with you, like you were, it just makes you feel safe. And even if I know a couple times I got a little pumped up, and you walked towards me and said a few words, and I just kind of sat back down again. And the emotions and the anger are just like on fire in those courtrooms. Yeah. Just curious, how does cultural safety and Indigenous knowledge shape what you do every day on your work?
A lot of our families, so I would say about 70% of the homicides that occur in Winnipeg are Indigenous victims. And so a lot of our work that we do is working together with different organizations to provide support that feels safe. And so sometimes families will come in and it's like, I need an elder, or I want to work with a knowledge keeper, or sometimes it's a pastor, or whatever it might be. We can smudge in our space. And so it's really making the space for every family that comes through. It's making sure that they have a place to be themselves, whatever that looks like. So it's a really important part of what we do.
And how do you work in partners with, I don't know, the Winnipeg Police, maybe the Crown Attorney's Office, Victim Services? How do those all fall into place?
Yeah, so I didn't say this before, but Candace House is actually a first of its kind. So there's nothing like us in North America. So everything that we've kind of built and are doing, we've made up along the way. And so as time goes on, we've been able to really establish good working relationships with police agencies, with Crown attorneys, with corrections and parole officers. And so there's social workers that work together within these organizations, together with police. And so we help connect families and liaise between. We're kind of the one-stop shop connecting place. And so if there's, if someone has a question and they need to understand what's going on, we know the people to connect. If we don't have the answers, we'll be able to connect you with the people that do.
And one of the biggest things that happens when you go to the law courts building is parking. It's impossible to find parking. And, there's a massive lineup to get into the courthouse and to go through that security process. But you're looking for parking. What else Candace House does, they pay for your parking. So you get indoor parking at, let's just say, the convention center, or there's another place by there, right?
Yeah, convention center. And
so you go in there and you don't have to worry about that. You could park in a warm place. They pay for your parking, so you're not running out to parking meters all day long. And that's really admirable.
Hey, Brad, the producer, wants to know if you pay for the parking ticket, because I think I might have got a parking ticket when I was there this week.
Brad, did you forget you're not supposed to be part of the show? We're gonna have Brad in the penalty box for at least, I'd say, 2 shows before you get to see his pretty face again. So what impact does Candace House have on families going through this court proceeding?
Well, why don't you tell me?
For me, it was a great impact. And let me tell you something. If you could touch my mom's heart, you could touch anybody's heart, because my mom's heart was touched, and she loved what you guys stood for. She loved that you were there. She loved that you came and held her hand and you sat beside her. She loved that you passed her Kleenex when she was crying. She loved that the whole part of being in court and having somebody with you, holding your hand through this process. For us, it was very special to have Candace House there, especially having you there with us. You're a very special person, and you remind me of what we do in funeral service. You're with families that are grieving, just lost loved ones, don't want to come to the funeral home, don't want to be there, but they need to make funeral arrangements, and you need a compassionate person to be by your side, to guide you, to protect you, to show you love, and to carry you through this. And I find that's what Candace House does. They're there for you, they show you love, they carry you through it, they explain things to you, they give you food, they give you parking, and they give you lots and lots of love. So they're a non-charitable organization. So if you want to give money to someone and donate and help families, because families need time when they're going through the courts. It's the most heartbreaking time ever. And how about counseling?
So we provide informal counseling, but not formal counseling. So it's a lot of, like you said, it's the emotional support. Really what we do at Candace House, the impact that we really see is that emotional support, like you talked about, trying to help families navigate the legal system, keeping families together, those access to justice pieces where families are like, oh, I can actually participate in this system because I feel supported. So those are a big part of the impact that
So
we
where's
see.
Candace House going to go from here? What's your plans? What's your future look like in the city of Winnipeg?
You know what? That's a great question. So we've now worked with. I've been giving this a lot of thought in the last few months. We're heading into a new strategic planning session this next year. So like I said, we've worked with, coming up on, by the end of the year, we'll probably have worked with 300 homicide matters. And that's been over a span of 7 years. Well, what about the homicides from 25 years ago?
Yeah.
And so now you have families who, for us now, are getting to the point where the offender is applying for parole. And so now you're navigating another whole system that's very overwhelming. And so we're really trying to figure out how can we continue to be there for families long term, because sometimes the support just can drop off. And so we really want to make sure that we're there for families along the way. So that's what we're thinking about, is how can we continue? We know what we're doing is working. We know what that family survivors of homicide need support. And so we're trying to figure out what fits best for what the skill set is that our organization have, that my staff have, and what needs continue to exist.
So for people that are curious, so for Kyriakis' court case, we've gone through the trial. The trial is now over. What happens next is the judge makes a decision. And that's going to be in a couple of weeks or so, maybe before. And then we come back to court again during that decision time. And she makes her decision known. And then we come back another time. And that's when sentencing takes place. And that's when you get to give an impact statement.
Yeah.
And so people who knew Kyriakis, whether they were best friends or schoolmates or somebody he touched, maybe a person who worked at his restaurant or on his boats or something, gets to come and give an impact statement. And do you do that to the judge, or are you talking directly to the accused?
Well, they want you to speak to the judge. You're kind of giving it to the court. But many families are letting, really the point is that you let the court know what happened, but it's an opportunity to share with the offender what they've done. And so it's a really important opportunity to share.
Do you know what's an important opportunity? This next question.
All right.
This next question is probably the most important. And before we get into it, I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart and my family's heart for all the kindness and love and everything you give. You were like a little angel in the courtroom. No, it's true. And I think that little angel needs to be there for more families. So how can a community in general, businesses, support Candace House to continue serving families and to continue doing the good things that you do?
Yeah, so the biggest way, for sure, spread the word about Candace House, let people know, follow us on our social media pages. Candace House is built from community, like I mentioned, and we thrive on donations. And so if you're able to make a donation, we're a registered charity, so everything that's given is tax receivable.
Oh, where do they donate? It's on the screen.
Yeah, on the screen. So you can donate through candacehouse.ca is where you can find us, or if you just Google Candace House Winnipeg, you'll be able to find our website, and then you just click on the donate button, or you can find our mailing address. And
so when people donate, do they get a receipt back in the mail?
They get a receipt.
Is it? Can they use it for tax purposes?
It is.
So tell
Tax
people about
receivable.
that. That's a big thing, because there's businesses out there that need tax write-offs, and you can donate to Candace House, get a tax receipt in return, which helps you when you're paying your taxes because it shows you made a donation to good purpose. So again, Cecily from Candace House, working with victim services together. Candace House again, Candace Dirksen, way back in what year was it?
1984.
In 1984, where she was found murdered in a shed in the middle of a field, and it was a heartbreaking story that touched so many people's lives in so many different ways. And I would have never thought that I would be in touch with Candace House, because I remember that story as clear as daylight and almost exactly what happened. And I remember the murderer had a cowboy hat, I believe it was, or that's what they were putting in the news, and I think it touched a lot of people's hearts. And there's so many people that. What are the things you want to talk about the court process and anything else that you do to help families, just so we can add more knowledge to this? I know what you did for us, but what else do you do? What extra mile do you go for families?
Yeah. You know what? I think one of the things that so along with working, so you mentioned counseling. So we're not running support groups ourselves, but we have community organizations that run support groups out of our space. So that's been really beneficial to be able to serve, again, as that community hub. We're always a phone call away. We believe in no wrong door. If there's something that's happened and you've experienced a violent loss of some kind, for the most part, we do work with homicide. Sometimes it's other types of fatalities. If it's a drive impaired, we want to make sure that families have support. So you give us a call. It's not that you have to come by Candace House or, be connected through a victim service worker or police. You can just look us up, and we're going to try to provide that support to you how we can.
Cecily, there are so many murders in Winnipeg, and it's embarrassing, actually, that we live in a city that the crime rate is so high. And what bothers me out of this the most is the catch and release program. How these people are caught, and before the ink is even dry on the paper, they're released back out to society, where they're a danger to society. And it's caused chaos in our city because the violence, the drugs, the mental health issues, all the things that this city is struggling with. And I think to add, salt on the wound, when you release somebody who's committed a major crime, a murder, a rape of a child, all those things that hurt society, and they're back in the street, back in our backyards, back in our neighborhoods, and we need to stop this. And one thing that I promised I would do in my brother's memory is to fight with every piece of strength that I have left in my body, which means in the near future, I'll be running for mayor. And you probably saw my posts on Facebook. You probably saw the things that I'm talking about. There's a fire in my soul to do well, to make neighborhoods safer again for you, to fight against the catch and release program. And who knows, maybe Kyriakis' case will be a turning point where the judges finally realize that this guy who was on trial was a guy who was on a promise to appear note, never appeared, committed a murder. And I just want to thank you right now to all the people who've sent me messages. I want you to know, even though there's thousands of them, I read every single message. And each one of those messages touches my heart. And I want to tell you that when a family is going through a murder, when a family is going through a trial, when a family is going through a tragedy, what's the most important is to have a community behind you. And when you write a note or a letter or, say, I'm going to pray for you, or all the things that people have been saying, I want to thank you from really the bottom of my heart for your goodness and your love and your care, because that's carried me through. That's given me the strength to do the things that I've done and to continue to do things that I do. And people say to me, and it's real. People say, hey, Mike, you're a funeral director. Are you not worried about hurting your funeral home by getting out and stepping outside of the box and speaking against things that some people may not agree with you with? Really, I think I have a support of a community, a support of a city. I'm not doing anything that's wrong. I'm doing something that's right. All I want to do is make things better for you and your families. And of course, Cecily is doing the same thing on her part. So if you have a heart, if you want to make a donation, please do it to Candace House. It's a great cause. Trust me, my family's gone through it, and we'll be making donations, and we'll be putting fundraisers on, and we'll be helping. And hopefully we can maybe get Candace House to go one step further and maybe have counselors on hand, because I think the next step would be a counselor. So when a family is going through a tragedy and they just don't understand, and counseling is expensive. And I know Victim Services has counseling, but it would be great to have a counselor on staff. So I'm sure if we could get enough funds together, enough donations, we can help Candace House take it one step further to help families that are grieving or going through the process of going through court. So again, Cecily, thank you so much.
Thank you so
for
much
being
for
here. And
having
again,
me.
thank you for your love, your care, your compassion. You'd be a great funeral director.
You know what? I have considered that as my retirement plan. So
Have you?
yeah.
Well, you're going to have to come to work at Voyage, because it's people like you that we need at the funeral home. And not only that, you've been there, you've done that, which gives you the experience to work with families on another level who've lost loved ones immediately and need care now. And that's what we do every day of the week.
Yeah.
So please like, share, and follow the show. We thank you for tuning in to another it's not Ask Funeral, it's the Mike Vogiatzakis Show. We just changed it. Thank you for tuning in to the Mike Vogiatzakis Show. God bless you and your families. Take care of yourselves and each other. Good night.
Good night.